The Unlikely Pairing. Mike was one of the Alsdale Railway engines on the Fat Controllers Railway. He was proud of his smart red paint and was also one of the red tender engines on the Alsdale Railway before he was brought to Sodor. And Frank was another engine from the Alsdale Railway. He was proud of being a diesel engine more than a steam engine and was always happy to be owned by the Fat Controllers Railway. But when Mike first came to the island of Sodor, James was jealous of him and wanted to feel like he was the only red tender engine on the island of Sodor and didn't like Mike much at all. One day he was with Mike and Frank pulling the express. Ha ha ha, laughed James. Stupid engines such as yourself are never going to be splendid engines by pulling the express, he said. That's the job for a foreign engine like me. Well, that's fine, said Mike. I don't really pull the express much, he said, so I'm not really used to it. Because, interrupted James, you could easily fail. I won't easily fail if I try, said Mike. I'm a splendid engine. A splendid engine? You are not, said James back. With that, he heard the guard's whistle blow. I have to get going before my passengers get cranky with me. Good luck. The express mustn't be late, he said, and he puffed away. Soon Mike began to feel very cross. I've had it with James, he said, feeling very annoyed. Then he spoke to Frank. We've got to team up, Frank, he said. Me? Team up with you? Said Frank hastily. I would never, he said. I've had enough of engines like you. I've got other jobs to do anyway. And he roared off. Mike was feeling left out. I've got a plan to take James down, he said. And the only engine who can team up with me will be Frank, said Mike to himself, and he raced off to find Frank. Later, Frank decided to take a nap at the sheds when Mike puffed up. He had something to tell Frank. I have a plan, he said to Frank. And what's that? Asked Frank. I would like you to team up with me and we can take down James together, he said. We think this afternoon he'll be taking the express up the mountain, he said. Then Frank decided. You know, he said, I don't think it will be a bad plan at all, he said. I knew I would like you, Mike, he said. Yes, said Mike. Now let's get going. I will, said Frank. The turntable turned towards Frank. Frank got out of his shed. Let's get going, Mike, said Frank. We will, said Mike. And the two puffed away to find James. But the mountain was the difficult part of being an express engine. James knew that this was all he had to do. Climbing up the mountain was the difficult part. On three, he said to James. Said James. 1, 2, 3. Come on, James, said his driver. You did all you could. Now let's get up the hill. I will, said James. I think I'm ready. Just then, he was ready to go up the hill when he didn't notice that Frank and Mike were coupled from behind the express. They gave him a helping hand by the start. Then James began to feel his confidence going up. I can do it, said James. This was too easy. But for the two Alsdale engines, it was easy. He's finally decided to fall for it, whispered Mike. He has, said Frank. Don't tell him what we're doing. And indeed they didn't. But no one did know, especially James. James had finally made it up the hill. Yes, he said, I did it. Man, that was crazy, but I had to do it, he said. Well done, James, said his driver. You have gotten your confidence. Confidence of nothing, whispered Frank. Indeed, agreed Mike, and they were all on the run. When James reached the mountain, he was being pushed too fast. "Help! Help!" he cried. Then there was trouble. James went on the bumpy track. He flew right off the mountain and crashed into a field. James was damaged and battered. "Help me!" he cried. "Yes," said Frank and Mike. "We did it! What a team we were!" They both said. Soon James found out. "You two," he said. "Look what you two have done," he said. "I'll tell the Fat Controller, and you two won't get away with it." "I'm afraid we can't," said Mike and Frank together, and they both raced away. "No!" cried James, but it was too late. Moments later, Stanley had been called to take the express to Knapford. And Butch soon came to James's rescue. "Don't worry, James," he said. "We'll have you back on the tracks again." "Oh, thank you, Butch," said James, and he was pulled away by Butch. Luckily, they were happy to have found Thomas with Rocky, and Butch roared out of the way, and Rocky lifted James back onto the tracks. Soon there was even more trouble. "We've made it just in time," said Frank to Mike. "We have," agreed Mike. Then they found James with the Fat Controller and some workmen. The work manager soon made a confession. "Sorry, sir," he said, "but I'm afraid James is severely injured after his incident with the express," he said, "so he'll have to go to the works." "Now another engine will have to take the express," he said. "I'm afraid Frank and Mike can do this job." "Hooray!" they both said. You two won't get away with this," said James. "What?" asked the Fat Controller. "That's right, sir," said James. "The engines who caused that accident was those two. Now, why would Frank and Mike cause this accident?" Then he asked them severely. "Is this true?" "Yes, it was, sir," said Frank and Mike. Then the Fat Controller was cross. "I will not punish you both," he said, "but I'm afraid you two will be doing more work," he said, "and you two won't take the express." "Yeah, I know, sir," they said. "We don't need to take the express. And after you two have done some goods work in the yards, you will take James to the works." "We will, sir," said the two engines, and I'm afraid you'll have to have even more repairs after what Frank and Mike have done to you today, James," said the Fat Controller. "We're very sorry," growled James.